Cashflow Diary Podcast, episode 269.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you're here today because we are going to be introduced to something that might actually blow your mind. Now, what do I mean? I mean, oftentimes when you set goals for yourself, I know when I've set goals for myself, I've thought that, man, this is huge. This is ginormous. There is no way it's going to take me decades to get this done. Okay. And it is interesting when we run into individuals who have not only done the things that we thought would take forever, but sometimes you surprise yourself and exceed your own goals. But more importantly, they redefine what's possible simply because they have already done it. And I think today's guest is going to do that for a number of you because just reading his bio and getting to talk to him and know him already, it has already happened for me because hear this. Today's guest is Rod Khleif. You may not know him, but know this. He's owned more than 2,000 single family homes. That's a 2 with a comma and and 3 zeros after it. And that number just when I saw that, I was like, he's got a lot of experience. He's dealt with a lot of people. But the thing that I think I enjoy the most about knowing him at this moment is the fact that, yes, he loves apartment buildings and prefers them. We're going to get into that. But he also loves giving and has a foundation where it's the Tiny Hands Foundation that has benefited more than 40,000 underprivileged children. Because, ladies and gentlemen, our business isn't just about us. It's also about those that we can serve. I know we're going to learn a lot. Let's listen to Rod Khleif. Rod, you there?
Yes, I sure am. Thanks for having me here, Jay.
I'm pretty excited because 2,000 single family homes sounds like a lot of roofs, a lot of plumbing, a lot of things that you've got insight into. And I think you're going to be able to shed some light on people because I've not done 2,000 I've had like 200, and I thought that was a headache.
Well, that's pretty good.
But
pretty good, though, yeah.
2,000, I'm like, okay, this is going to be good. This is going to be good. So I got a question for you. I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs like a lot like yesterday's superheroes. You know, we go around, we get dressed up occasionally, putting on, capes and tights and saving people in various different ways. And I think real estate entrepreneurs, obviously, are very, very similar in that. We're also similar in that before we did all the things that we do today, we had an origin story. We started out as everybody else, in so many different ways, shapes, and forms. So what we want to know is before the 2,000 single family homes, before the apartment communities, before your podcast, before the philanthropy, before all of those things, who is Rod Khleif?
Well, okay. You want to go all that far? That's a long way back. Well,
that's good. We got time.
I loved real estate. I loved real estate from the beginning because my mom bought the house across the street from us. She used her babysitting money to buy a house across the street from us for $30,000.
Whoa. Hold on. Did you say babysitting money?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
She's the one I think that gave me the entrepreneurial spirit, but she babysat a lot of kids and she used that money to buy a house across the street for $30,000 when I was probably 14, 15, somewhere around there. And when I graduated from high school, I was around 18, of course, that house was worth $55,000. And although I had to take math class twice because I flunked it and I hate math, apologies to all you math lovers. I can't stand math, but I was able to do that calculation. And so I thought, this is an opportunity for me to make a lot of money, real estate. And so I got my real estate license, my broker's license, actually, when I was 18. I was one of the youngest ever to do that because you could do that in Colorado where you could take the schooling rather than experience and get your broker's license. And then I got a bus bench down at the end of the street with my picture on it, which didn't get me any business, but made my mom real proud. I thought that's how you went out and got business. And my first year in real estate as a broker, I made $10,000. My second year, I made $15,000. And keep in mind, this is 1978, 79. Then my third year, I made over 100,000. And the difference between year 2 and 3 really was knowledge and competence. And then I started watching the broker that I was working for, and he was making a fortune buying houses. And so, I bought my first house. I was 21. It was a real piece of what. It was actually one of those. It was one of those shotgun houses where you walk in the front door and walk in the living room, then you walk through the dining room, through the kitchen to get to the bedroom in the back. Yeah, no hallways. Yeah, nice. I paid I think $18,000 for it, but
it was yours.
It was mine. Yeah, and I remember it had a horrible cat smell, and it was ugly, but I made money on it, and then I ended up buying 500 houses in Denver and did really well with that. Bought a couple of hundred houses in Memphis. I really don't want to talk about that. I call my failures seminars, and that was a big seminar for me. And then I ended up buying over 1,300 houses in Florida. And I will tell your listeners, don't do that. Just don't do it. It sounds great, and I made a lot of money, and I lost a lot of money. I actually have some spectacular failures, like I say, that I call seminars. And one of them was in 2008 when I had 800 houses and the market crashed. And I was, at that time, I was at a 30% loan to value. What that means is for every dollar in real estate I owned, I only owed 30 cents. So I thought I was in great shape. And I thought, 80 million baby boomers are getting old and getting cold, and Florida is recession proof. No. And so when I saw my values actually plummet below what I owed on them, that was another seminar for me. And, I'm literally still now finally recovered from that, but it was a real kick in the butt. But the reason I say don't do it is not because houses can't make you a lot of money. They can. You hear about flippers and all that. I'm a buy and hold guy. I've always been a buy and hold guy. I don't like to sell. I like to say I'm a real estate buyer versus a real estate seller. And that works great in multifamily. It doesn't always work great in single family homes. Here in Florida, for example, because the taxes and the insurance are so high with the hurricanes that we have here, and because we don't have personal income tax, it's very, very difficult to cash flow on moderately priced single family homes. You buy a home and you're thinking, okay, I'm cash flowing $200 a month on this place. The problem is if it goes empty and you lose a month's rent, and then you have to turn it around, put paint and carpet in it, you've lost 2 years worth of cash flow.
Right.
So in my business model, I had to sell a house occasionally or refinance a house occasionally. And when it tightened up in 2008, that just became nearly impossible. But I will, what I do now is I'm totally focused on multifamily, because I had apartment complexes as well. I had a couple of apartment complexes down here, and those did extremely well through the crash. There was some tightening, but they made it. And you mentioned my podcast. I've interviewed some very wealthy people on my podcast, like a billionaire that's got 35,000 apartment units. And he said something that really stuck with me, and that is there's another correction coming. And so, everything in real estate is in cycles, and we're at the top of a cycle now, and or the perception is that we could be at the top, and nobody can read that crystal ball. But if you buy conservatively and with cash flow in mind, forget value, totally focus on cash flow, you can survive a correction. And that's why, that's why I love multifamily. So, and I can talk ad nauseum about the other reasons that single family homes are challenging from a buy and hold strategy. And I can touch on that for a minute. First of all, it takes as much effort to buy a 20-unit apartment complex as it does to buy a house. And if you're vacant on it, if your tenant's out of your house, you're 100% vacant. But if you've got some multifamily, even if it's just a duplex or triplex, you can typically survive some vacancy. So that's one thing. It takes, like I say, as much effort to buy, sometimes less effort, believe it or not, to buy a small commercial property like an apartment community. But my situation was I had houses scattered, 2 hours in each direction.
Ooh.
And just the logistics of first of all, buying them, and you have to be great with systems. You have to set up systems, which is one of the few things I'm great at. But it's a logistical nightmare, and it's a management nightmare. But if you're going to buy single family houses, I'd try to talk you out of it. I would try to talk you out of it. But the other thing is the maintenance. If you've got a little apartment complex, typically that's going to have the same plumbing fixtures, the same, electrical fixtures, typically similar appliances. And, for those of you that have some real estate right now, that, if you send a plumber or send a maintenance guy and they encounter, different setups every time, it's a real hassle because, with an apartment complex, you can stock, what you need that you're going to need. And with houses, you never know what you're going to run into because they're all different. So from a maintenance standpoint, it's a hassle as well. And then you got to run around and meet tenants to lease them, where if you're in one community, it's much, much easier logistically to meet tenants. And so.
Yes, I agree. I mean, I'm just glad someone else is saying it other than me, because it took me, like I said, I went to 200 and then I'm like, I don't want to do this way.
Right. Well, I know you follow Kiyosaki, and he's one of my heroes. I've read every one of his books, and he talks about being the definition in cash flow quadrant about being self-employed versus being a business owner.
Right.
Well, if you're flipping houses, you may think you're a business owner, but you're self-employed. I hate to say it. I mean,
right.
you every January 1st, you go back to work. Where if you buy cash flowing real estate, someone else is paying it off, and it's like having an annuity. And there's nothing. I don't know what else you can buy that someone else pays off for you. To me, that's being a business owner. There's good money to be made in flipping, but that is working, and that is a job. Any way you shake it. I mean, I don't want to take anything away from the people that are doing it, but for me, I'd rather build something, build a nest egg, and build a solid nest egg, one that's going to survive another correction. And that to me, the best thing out there right now is multifamily, and that could be mobile home parks, even apartments, mobile home parks. But to me, that's. Now, I've had my butt handed to me, so I'm probably a little more conservative maybe than some of the people that listen to your show, but
I doubt it. Because many of them have all been and experienced what we tend to call failure events of either their own making or
right.
not. So, which actually brings up a question that I wanted to ask, because having gone through the things that you have gone through, how do you view failure? Because we tend to deal with a lot of new individuals who want to, as you go through school, you're taught to get it right the first time. You don't need any help and all these types of things.
I don't know who tells you that.
Well, that's what we're trained.
Some of the teachers at school that haven't gone out there and actually done it. But success is and this is trite and people have heard this before, but it's not a destination. It's never a destination. It's a journey. And I I know. Can I speak to what drives me?
By all means, I'm curious because
Okay.
that many people are dealing with that. I know some people right now are stuck because they're afraid to fail, so they don't start. And some people have failed and they're afraid to start again. And others are choosing because, and I know I know some in our community are not taking that next step. There are many who are listening right now who have done more single family houses than they should have. And I've told them time and again, it's time for you to step that game up to something a little bit bigger. But
Right.
that fear of the mistake, it's always there. So
Sure.
yeah, by all means.
Well, I'll tell you. First of all, you've got to, I know you've spoken about this actually, but you've got to find your why. You've got to motivate yourself. And what I do and what I tell my son, who I love to coach, he's 21 years old and he's getting into real estate. And I told him, find out what it is you want. What do you really want? And then for me, I subscribe to vision boards, and just like they talk about in The Secret, the movie and the book, The Secret.
Right.
And so I have multiple vision boards. I have pictures of everything I want. And if you go to my office, I'm sitting in my office, you'll see pictures of the material things that I want. You'll see, statements of things that I want. So you've got to obviously find what motivates you and make sure that it's in your vision. It's in your planner. I have pictures of my planner that have been in there for 15 years. And what's astounding is probably 3/4 of those things in there I've gotten. And so, it really does work, to manifest what you want in life, to have, and to really be specific with specificity, what it is you want to find that drive, because you're going to get your butt kicked. It's going to happen. And as long as you've got, first of all, you've got to love it as well too. And
Yes.
for those of you that are struggling with going from single family to maybe to multifamily, your first property, if knowledge is critical. And as I said, my second and third years in real estate, I went from 15,000 to over 100,000. And what did it for me was getting the confidence, because I went out and got the knowledge. So get the books, listen to these podcasts, about whatever type of real estate you want to get into, and fill your mind and wallow in it. I tell my son, you've got to literally, live it and eat it and breathe it. And then that'll help with the confidence. And then of course, you've got to take the first step. And that's why I start with I started my conversation with finding the drive, because, like Steve Jobs said, before he died, it's critical that you do something that you love, because you're going to get beat up. And that's what's going to keep you going. Is the drive and the desire and doing something that you enjoy. I love real estate. I literally love it. And it's tangible. You can go kick the side of the wall. You can see it. It's not like buying a stock that you can't see. You can see the real estate. And, I loved acquiring, buying property like that. So, for me, I love it. And if you don't love it, I don't recommend you do it, or you learn to love it. And you can, train yourself to associate pleasure with whatever it is you want to, become better at, do more of. You just associate pleasure to it, and mentally. It's a technique. One of my mentors, greatest mentor, actually, Tony Robbins, talks about it. But you associate pleasure. So,
yeah.
So anyway, that's what I do to find the drive. That I have, I have these vision boards. I have pictures of what I want, and I have, and I have these I am statements on the wall. Anything you put I am in front of is your identity. And so, I have I am focus, I am execution, I am determination on the wall. I can, I have pictures that I sent to Vistaprint and framed them, and they're on my wall. And there's nothing more powerful in the human psyche than the need to remain consistent with how we identify ourselves. So, these I am statements are very powerful for me, but that's how I've gotten through, the setbacks. And I've had lots of them. Like I said, I call them seminars. I've had some spectacular success and some spectacular failures that are seminars.
Absolutely.
Some are more expensive than others. So.
Absolutely. A while ago, I did I think it was like an hour and a half webinar session where all I did was go through mistake after mistake after mistake that I made. And I was like, here's the first one, and here's how much this one cost, and here's the second one, and here's what I learned from that one. It took a while, but it was pretty fun.
They're all learning experiences, and you just have to push through that, push through the fear, learn as much as you can. I mean, that'll help a lot, but you got to push through it. It's worth it. It's really worth it. And once you've done one and you see that it's not as hard as you think it is, and you're buying assets that produce income safely, that are recession proof or correction proof, I mean, your world opens up. I mean, your financial fear is gone, especially once you're cash flowing enough to offset your basic bills. So
absolutely. Now, one of the things that this I think brings up, and I know you must know a ton about, is there's the actual steps of of what it takes to build a real estate portfolio and or just do a transaction. I think are relatively simple. The challenge is internal. Dealing with our own psychology, who we are, who we don't think we are, who we're not, all these types of things. It's the mental game that seems to me to be way more important than the technical knowledge of, hey, is this a land contract versus a purchase money mortgage versus, what my mezzanine financing might look like. What say you to, yeah, okay.
Oh, no question. In fact, I do these, I'm not trying to put a plug for my podcast, but I do these little 5-minute segments called your driving force success tips. And because 80% of what you do is your psychology. So these are about psychology, the psychology of taking action, goal setting, and you need, let's talk about goal setting for a second. I do my goals probably quarterly, and it's been proven that people that write their goals down exponentially do better than people that don't. And so you have to have a target, because otherwise you don't know what you're going for. So goal setting is critical. But and I have to give Tony Robbins credit for this. It's his line, and that is, 80% of anything you do is the psychology, and only 20% is the mechanics. And
right.
So you're right. I mean, yes, you can talk about the land contracts and the mezzanine financing and all that stuff, but that's only 20% of it. 80% is the psychology. So from goal setting to visualization is huge. Like these pictures that you do, vision boards, you do pictures of the things that you want. You visualize yourself as if you already have them, with gratitude and with emotion, and you'll get them. I mean, it works. I mean, people, I used to think it was like foofy, but then I realized that, when I was driving, when I was like 19 or 20, I had a Ford 4-door Granada, and I'm sorry, but it's an ugly car. Okay. And so I had this ugly car, and I had a picture of a Corvette on the visor of that car. And I got a Corvette. And then on the visor of the Corvette, back in the day, I don't know, this will really date me, but there was a TV show called Magnum PI, and Tom Selleck drove a Ferrari 308, beautiful red Ferrari 308. And I wanted one of those. So I had a picture of a red Ferrari 308 on the visor of my Corvette, and I ended up getting a Maserati, which from the front end looks exactly like the Ferrari 308. And so visualization works. I'll give you one last story just because it's kind of cool. So I had my son and I, we watched The Secret. And this was after what I'm about to tell you. So while I've always wanted a Lamborghini, so I have pictures of them. They're called, back in the day, it was the Countach, and then then the Diablo. And I always wanted a Lamborghini, and I had pictures of them. And then I told my son I wanted one, so he got pictures of them. And then he actually got a model of the same color, same style, of the one that I actually ended up getting. And so we're sitting there watching The Secret, and he looks to me, and this was, when it first came out. So he was, I don't know, he's like in his 12, 13, something like that. He says, we manifested that Lamborghini, didn't we? And sure enough, it works, and that stuff works. And it's worked for me. And, when I look back on it, I didn't know I was doing it, but I was. And
right.
So, Your brain has this thing called the reticular activating system, and it filters out all the stuff that you experience throughout the day. And for example, for those of you that haven't heard this analogy for it before, when you first buy a car, you never really saw that car before. You really didn't notice it. Once you buy that car, you see them everywhere. And that's your reticular activating system, because now it knows what you're interested in. And the same thing works with goals. And that when you write your goals down, you start recognizing things that will help you achieve those goals, and or use pictures or whatever it is you use to propel yourself forward.
Totally agreed. A quick side story before I ask my next question is, believe it or not, I too went down the Lamborghini thought process as well, until one day. So I was taking it to the next step, right? You go from the pictures. One of my mentors said, okay, if you're thinking about a car, go test drive it. I'm like, sweet. Being out here in Orange County, that's just a hop, skip, and a jump down the dealership. They're everywhere. And then I realized something traumatic. I'm too tall and don't fit. Oh, yeah. Man. Yeah. I was like,
that's how it was for me with Ferraris. I couldn't, if I'd have bought a 308, I wouldn't have fit in it. But luckily I did fit in the Lambo.
Yeah. I'm like,
that story goes on. I wrecked it. So I totaled it actually. So,
right.
There's a seminar there too.
Right. It's like, dude, so yeah, they didn't, no one told me that Lamborghinis.
How tall are you, Jay?
I'm a little over about 6'4". And
wow.
My leg, I'm mostly legs, so it just didn't work. I'm like, this is not cool. I was supposed to have one of these.
Bummer.
But it's all good. It's all good. Now, so you being a cash flow person, and I also live in that same philosophy of, the whole cash flow thing. And I know every summer or every year we go through this cycle, and especially with TV, on television, it's never, hey, let's watch the investor buy a house and earn $200 a month patiently and passively. It's always the flashy, sexy 20 grand, and I watch me earn 20 grand in 30 minutes, type of television show. And I think there's a skill set that's required to be successful as a buy and hold person. And I was just kind of curious as to your thought process on just the concept of delayed gratification. Yeah.
Great question.
Okay. So you're probably wondering, like, why are they talking about delayed gratification and all these other things? Well, there's just a number of skill sets necessary to go out there and become the real estate entrepreneur that you want to be. Many times we forget that it's still a business. And that's why I'm so excited for you to be hearing this particular episode. In fact, I don't even want to take any more time away, because there's so much more that you're about to hear and about to learn. If anything, I want to give you a moment to go grab a notepad and get right back ready. Hit pause, something, because it's really about to get awesome with this second segment.
We live in a society that wants to take a pill, to fix things, and expects instant gratification. And guys, put on your common sense hat. I mean, really, first of all, you can't make 20 grand in 30 minutes. And if you do, it's going to be a huge anomaly. And more importantly, if you step into your common sense corner, you realize that anything that you've ever done that's been spectacular has taken effort. And this is no different. And so, take it from me. I flipped houses. I bought 2,000 of them. So it's something I know a lot about, and I won't do it again. And so, hopefully listen to that lesson, because, if you're going to go out and buy property, go buy a duplex, buy a triplex, buy a 20 unit, a 50 unit, or go even higher. And you'll be so glad you did, for all kinds of reasons. And your family will be glad you did, because there's nothing more secure than that. If you buy it right, obviously. You can't be stupid about it. You've got to learn, the business a little bit, but remembering that 20% is the mechanics and 80% is the psychology. But yeah, it's a shame that, and it's even, honestly, this whole instant gratification and entitlement mentality is even worse with kids these days. And, I struggle with it, because it it takes work. It does. It takes work. You got to learn this stuff. I mean, yeah, you actually have to learn it, and you have to work it, and you have to take action and all of that. But it's so worth it. And
Agreed.
So
agreed. No.
Hopefully that answered your question.
No, I had a feeling you would feel similar to myself. I was just curious, you've been doing it longer, so I was like, I was wondering, was I crazy, or was what am I seeing and what am I feeling, and like why? There is work that goes into it, and it's those years, like you said, your first 2 years as a broker, it was planting the seeds and gaining the knowledge and the competence. You didn't get to that 6 figures until the third year, but most people will have quit, 6 months in and going, I tried it, it didn't work, and without realizing how important it is to give yourself time to gain the skill sets and to grow personally. And which gets me to my next question is, for your own journey, more importantly, not just is personal growth or has personal growth played a role for you, but is that something you still, do? Are you still out there trying to gain more knowledge?
Huge. Now that's just, see, and I tell my kids this, be curious. The most successful people in the world and the happiest people in the world are curious. Be curious. Don't just take things at face value. But as far as my personal growth, I mean, my kids used to look at me, when I had 800 houses, and I would be going to single family house boot camps. And they're like, what are you doing? I mean, you could teach this stuff. And I said, you know what? Every single time I go, I get a nugget. I get something of value. And so, it's constant. I mean, I literally just went to a commercial real estate boot camp 2 months ago, and I went to a multifamily boot camp 6 months ago. So, you can never know too much. And, so I'm a huge proponent on the technical side of always being growing. But then on the personal side, which I think you may have been alluding to, I started working on myself late. And I will say this, late. And I'll tell you how it happened. I built this amazing house on the beach, 10,000 square feet, testament to my ego. Gulf to Bay lot. I owned the beach on one side. I had boats on the back side, and it's something that I'd wanted for 20 years. I had pictures of palm trees, and I knew I wanted to live on the beach. And I finished the house, and I'm floating in my pool, which was lighting up different colors at night. I mean, this home is spectacular. Waterfall from the second floor into the pool. I mean, spectacular home. But I'm laying there and I was depressed. And which brings me to another lesson. Never achieve a goal without having new goals set for it. But the reason I bring all this up is I couldn't understand why I was depressed. So I started reading books again, and I came across one of Tony Robbins' books, Unleash the Power Within, and I read it. And I was halfway through it, and I booked myself for his boot camp, and that was 16 years ago. And I've done 3 or 4 of his events every year since, and I actually help out as well at his events because I'm such a proponent in self-actualization and learning and growing. And you mentioned my foundation, which I'd love to chat about.
By all means,
have time. Yeah, well, and I got that from being around Tony in that environment. And we've fed 40,000 kids for the holidays. We've given thousands of backpacks filled with school supplies to kids that need them. We've given thousands of teddy bears to police departments for patrolmen to hold in their patrol cars for when they a child that's experienced a traumatic event. And that's one of the greatest joys of my life is giving back. And I hope those of you listening experience that. And if you haven't experienced, make it a point to experience it, because that's really what life is about, giving back. And it adds richness that you can't imagine to your life. And, you've heard the saying, you get back 10 times what you give. It's no question that that's accurate. It's probably more than that. And so, it's as far as the self-growth and the self-actualization and learning, it's a lifelong thing, and do it with pleasure, because it is pleasurable if you're learning something you're interested in.
You're right. Some college student just said, "Yeah, if I was learning something I was interested in, that would be great."
Right.
Yes, I can hear him saying it all right now. So, with this process, and I think this is amazing. The fact that you come, from all the things that you've done, and now you've developed your own podcast. I view that even just the podcast in of itself being as another form of continuing
to give back,
to give. Yeah,
no question. And I don't sell anything. I don't promote anything. All I want to do is add value, and I feel like I'm doing that. I've interviewed some amazing people, and I'm really, really enjoying it. And so, I'm at a point in my life. I'm 57, and I love giving back. And I love, and I take calls from people, and I coach people, not for a fee, just to I'll take your call and I'll help you if you've got a question. And it's added a richness that I didn't expect, it's just fantastic. So no, you're absolutely right. That's
agreed.
What life's about.
I agreed that, and it's been an interesting journey, and it continues to be more interesting because we as real estate entrepreneurs are intimately involved in a place that people spend a lot of their time, and you learn some interesting things. So I've gotta know. The interview with a buy and hold person would be complete without asking the following, because I know this is something that people are concerned about, but if they hear it from another different person who's survived some of these things, they'll be able to go, okay, well, it's all right. Because I know, at least for me, it's been true. There have been times when I see things on the news or I hear the sirens go by, and I'm just like, please, oh, please don't be my building or my tenant. When you look, right? So
sure. Oh my God, I could tell you stories about.
Well, that's actually the question I'm about to ask, is to give us some of those stories that you're just like, wow, that's people. It really happened.
Yes. I've had numerous people die in my units. It's life. You're going to experience life through your units, and that's okay. And, numerous fires, and those are typically windfalls, by the way, but
right.
As long as nobody gets hurt, that's critical,
right.
But it's, people say, oh my God, I don't want the phone calls on the leaky faucets, or I don't want to have to deal with, a crisis or whatever. But the benefits so far outweigh the things that you have to do when you're taking care of a property. And that's why I recommend multifamily, because especially if you go over, if you find a couple of 20-unit buildings or buy a 40-unit building where you can afford to have an on-site person, most of that stuff gets handled by them. A lot of the speakers out there will tell you, hire a management company, which I don't recommend because you have to manage them anyway. But, it's not that bad. And as long as you take care of the people that are living in your units and you're responsive to them, and, you communicate with them once in a while and let them know you care about them, they stay for a long time if they feel like they're taken care of. And, it's like anything else. Yeah, you're going to have to work it a little bit, but it's not like a job. It's really, frankly, it's a fraction of what you do in a regular job. So, you'll get people that say, oh no, I'll never own a property because I don't want the call at midnight. Well, you know what? Very rare that the calls come in at midnight anyway. And, right. if you've got somebody on site that's taking those kinds of calls, it's got a little bit of maintenance background that can go stop a leak or whatever until the next day when an expert can come out. It's just cost of doing business, and it's relative to it's to be expected when you buy a property like that, and it's part of the the expense factors that you factor in when you buy a building, and you're going to have those. But I'll tell you, I highly encourage anybody that's even slightly thinking about getting into real estate to look at multifamily, do that instead, and don't get scared by the people that say, "Oh, I would never do that." In fact, most of those people never owned a property anyway. They just, they loved it. They love to poo-poo your ideas. So don't get caught up in that. It's very rewarding, both financially and just from a security blanket standpoint. If you've got, like I said, if you've got your nut covered with cash flow, it doesn't get any better than that. I mean, you're basically free.
So now, which brings up the question, though, when you're talking about your operational structure, I'm assuming at some point you kept the management in-house and had an internal management team?
Yeah. I've had a management company. I've had a management company for 40 years.
Got it. There it is.
39 years. But I've got a property manager right now, and she, and I've gone through them. Yeah. Sometimes you get some good ones, some bad ones. And I didn't know what I was doing when I first started hiring people. But I've got a great one right now, and sometimes people get burned out in it too, because right. The reality is people don't call when they're happy; they do call when they're unhappy. So some people right. burn out from those phone calls, but it's not that big a deal. It's show the units, to get them rented. And with the internet these days, you can go in and do a nice video of the property. You can put it on Craigslist. You can put pictures on Craigslist. They can be sold on the place before they even meet you. And, and then sure, you've got to screen them and you've got to sign a lease. And you'll have to spend some time initially making sure the lease is the way you want it. But there are lots of great examples online for good leases anymore. And if you don't, call me if you want a great one. I've got great ones. It's and then you've got to take care of them when they're in there. You've got to fix their problems, be responsive, stay in touch with them, and then worst case, yeah, you're going to have to evict somebody once in a while, but you get an attorney to do that. And again, it's just an expense that you've already anticipated, so it's no big deal. It's really not stressful.
No, not really.
Once you've done it a while, I mean, yeah, sure, the first couple times it happens, somebody moves out on you, it might be a little stressful, but when you realize it's going to happen, you just expect it once in a while. It's just not a big deal. Really not.
Completely agreed. Now, the when it comes to just the process of evolving to building these systems and these teams, there has to be some of that transformation in either thought process or that journey. How did you grow? Because I know somebody's going to ask me later. It's like, hey, Jay, why didn't you ask him this? How did you grow from doing? Because a lot of it you started doing yourself, but you had to slowly give out responsibilities to other people. How did you manage that transition?
Well, it was pretty organic initially. As I found myself being overwhelmed, I would bring somebody in to help with that. And I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I was in my 20s, I made lots of mistakes. I mean, every possible mistake you can imagine, I've made it. And what's funny is I didn't start learning about what I was doing until after I already had 500 houses. I didn't go to classes beforehand. I just did it, And so every possible mistake you can make, I made. And so don't do it my way. Go out and learn first, okay? And you'll cut your mistakes by 95%. So, there's so much information online, these podcasts, books, and you've got to study it. I mean, and again, associate pleasure with it because it can be very financially lucrative. So, figure out what you want in life, get pictures of it, and associate the pleasure of having those things with learning about this. But as far as setting up the systems, really it sounds more complex than it is. I mean, I checklisted things, when I found patterns, like people, when you move in, you checklist the condition of the place. When they move out, you double check that against your move-in one. I found patterns, and so I checklisted around many of them. But even with that, you're going to make a mistake from time to time, and that's okay. But that it really just evolved, and I've been thinking about trying to put together all of my forms and all of that stuff and just have it out there online for people to take if they want it. It's kind of a big project, but
yes,
I've got hundreds of them, but they evolve they've evolved as well. But anyway, I'm digressing.
So now, and this is the other thing, because I keep hearing it in the way you're speaking, and I think it to be very, very true. A lot of people, especially when they're newer, they tend to focus they're beginning their real estate business. They're focused on the building, but yet most of the time when you've been talking, you've been more focused on the person living in the building, and I think a lot of real estate entrepreneurs tend to forget that it's the person in the building is where that value is going to come from more than the building itself. And I would love to hear any comments you have about that.
Listen, that is a global dynamic. I've owned many, many businesses, and they all hinge on the people. So it's not just the real estate business, but definitely the real estate business. Many, many investors, myself included, my dumb ass did the same thing when I first got started. And that is, I'd buy the house, I'd throw a tenant in there, and I'd be like, yay, I did it, I'm done. But I wasn't done, because, those relationships with those people are can literally make you a fortune. Because for those of you that haven't turned over a unit, that haven't had a unit that went empty, or a house or an apartment that went empty,
right.
When they move out, you got to paint it. You got to clean it up. Sometimes you got to replace the carpet. You've got it empty for a couple of months. It's expensive. So you want to avoid turnover. And if people feel a connection to you and they feel like you care about them, they're going to stay unless, some life situation happens. Why would they leave? Hey, he cares about us. After, he fixes a plumbing, he calls to make sure it's okay. He asks about my kids or whatever. He's built a rapport with me. They won't leave. And that's like money in the bank. I mean, that's not the reason to do it, but yes, it's part of the reason to do it. And so take care of those people. And just like like if you're an employer, take care of your employees, because they are your lifeblood. They make or break you. So, it's kind of a universal dynamic. Relationships are everything.
Agreed. Now, I know that people have been listening for a little while, and they're probably wondering, okay, he's mentioned the podcast. How else can they track you down and get more from you and hear, the wisdom and the value that you are creating?
That's kind of you to say that. I'm actually writing a book. It's still probably 60 days away from being done, but I'm going to give it away for free. There's no upsell. I'm not trying to sell anything. I just want to add value. And they can text me. They text Rod to 41411. So my name, Rod, R-O-D, and text it to 41411, and I'll put you in the queue for one of those books when they're ready. Don't hold me to the 60 days. I hope it's going to be then, but it'll really add a lot of value. It should be over 200 pages long, all about buying multifamily real estate. And then, my podcast is the Lifetime Cash Flow Podcast, and it's all interviewing people that are successful in the multifamily space. And that's my focus. I'm not into houses, as you may have guessed, although I've got huge experience in them. I'm not into houses. I'm into multifamily, because I really believe that's where huge wealth creation comes in. I mean, I've interviewed everything from a billionaire, like I said, that owns 35,000 units, to guys that only have a couple of duplexes, but how they achieve the success in that space. So, they can look, or you can certainly email me as well, rod@rodkhleif.com. That's Rod at RODKHLEIF as in Frank.com. If you've got any questions, I'm happy to get emails, and I even schedule calls to talk to people if they want some advice. So happy to do that.
And agreed. And I definitely underscored the whole multifamily thing, because when I was I have one building, it's 182 units. And
wow,
I
fantastic.
know that on that particular building, we can have up to 44% occupant or vacancy. And break even.
Wow. Now see, okay, I hope you all heard that. I mean, that's what I'm talking about here. You've got a house and it's empty, you're 100% vacant.
Right.
You could be a 44%. That's fantastic, man. You've got a great asset there. That's fantastic.
Then that was when I realized that those numbers were like, okay, hold on. That means, okay, yeah, this is good. This is what I want. Those are the types of things I care. I want to do that.
You can survive any downturn, even if there's a contraction and people, you have some vacancy, you can survive it. And I tell you, that's huge. And it's obviously cash flowing extremely well. Congratulations. That's awesome.
So with that being said, I know that right now, as we end here, there's a person listening. And there's a person who's said to themselves, I'd like to be like Rod one day. I want to go out there and make these things happen. But Rod, here's what's going on. In the back of their mind, they're dealing with that voice. And I know you know that voice very, very well because you've done battle with that voice. You have overcome that voice. And that voice is telling that person right now all the things why it won't work and how they don't have this in their background and why they don't know, they don't have the time, the money, the credit, the kids, the whatever is in the way of what it is that they want. And it's loud and it's consistent. Here's what I want to ask you as we end. Let's pretend that person is listening right now and will actually follow through and do exactly what you said. What would you tell them to do right now?
I will rehash a couple of things I said before because they play. I would identify what it is you want. Make sure you get pictures of it and write it down. Do your goals. I would learn everything you possibly could about multifamily real estate investing. Buy some books, maybe go to a course or two. Definitely listen to podcasts. There's incredible experts in the industry there. And immerse yourself in it, because with that, you'll get confidence, and then take that first step. Don't be afraid of it. Just go do it. Just literally go do it. And you'll be so glad you did.
Excellent, sir. I am grateful that you have taken the time out of your day just to invest with us here at the Cashflow Diary and share your wisdom here with the audience.
It's absolutely my pleasure. I've enjoyed it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. That means you probably should be sending a text message, because when that book comes out, you need to read it. Because here's the thing. I hope you heard something that was really, really, really key. You will never A, out-earn your personal growth, but B, even Rod, after having thousands of single-family homes and doing apartment buildings and lots of businesses, he's after one new idea every time he goes anywhere to a new seminar, learning constantly. It doesn't stop, and neither should you. So make it happen. You're closer than you realize. It's been fun talking to you guys today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.